some point in time, you should have known someone who knew someone or someone directly who's had this experience. And so we've had to get someone who will be able to shed light and speak to us on the issues around it. Now, if you still don't get the drift of where all of this conversation that would get Lagos talking this morning is heading, let me just break it down a bit now. Let's see. Recently, the state commissioner for environment and water resources, Tokumba Wahab, had said, look, there is no going back on the demolition of houses that, encroached into the space of the canals in terms of channels, draining out water from parts of the state. Wherever it is, if it encroaches, they would take it down. And a case not too far away was when the bulldozers and the tractors moved into the quarter axis of the state around the Lekki Phase 2 area of state. And, well, that's what they said. They identified the drain corridors of the state, and houses have encroached very close to the drains. And according to the commissioner, the authorities will not stay back and allow this happen, because when the waters would come to navigate their way, where silent as water may be, it will just keep coming at you and it will find its way and take down whatever is in front of it. That's how water can be. So today we would get into this conversation as we look around the issues of addressing issues of building allocation and property in Lagos this morning. And I've been joined by someone who is in the know more, is even in the business and the legality of all of it all. I've been joined by Ayobayo Babade this morning. He's a real estate consultant and a property lawyer. Good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Thank you very much for having me here this morning.
You're welcome to Lagos Talks 981 on Smooth 98.1 FM. So let's get into the details of these issues of people encroaching. You must have heard of that demolition that occurred around that axis. Let's even get your impression of how it hit you, knowing that money, that's time that has been put into all of those, and then it all has gone down.
Yeah, so it's very sad, to say the least, because on all sides. First, on the side of those who have invested in it, because property, like we know, for most people, is the single largest investment most people would make. It runs into millions, particularly in Ikota, where land value are in the hundreds of millions, let alone the house value on those property on those things. So it's a lot, and for somebody to put so much there and see it go down the drain, it's very sad. And so on the part of the government, I also see the government's desire to ensure that that things are done properly, such that a situation would arise where if water does not have anywhere to go to, it floods everywhere, and we could have issues of flooding, which could lead to further loss of lives and properties and all that. So it's just navigating that part. And as we go in the discussion, because I know sadly a large number of professionals who ought to have done things rightly may not have, or a number of people who own those properties did not consult right professionals before going ahead. And something must have gone wrong for that to have happened in the first place, and for it to have stayed that long. And so it's just, I always, sadly that has happened, but what we should look at this morning is how it should not occur again. What steps we can take, because it has happened, is a sad one. People who have invested millions, seeing it go down the drain is not a good sight at all. No matter how rich one is, losing parts of those values is not something anyone would desire. So it's a sad one, but the government is saying they're doing this for the greater good of everyone. And so it's just looking at how not to let it occur again is what we should do.
Because you are the expert in this, and I'm happy because you are a real estate consultant and a property lawyer.
Yes.
So I'd like you to, let's begin with, for those listening, even as people are counting their losses over the demolition, and others who would also get the tractors coming in their direction in the days ahead, if we are to go by the words of the Commissioner for Environment.
Yeah.
So when an individual gets ready to say, okay, he wants to acquire land, take us through the steps, ideally, because you had already hinted, how do we get to avoid this not happening again?
Exactly.
Walk us through the steps.
Exactly. So the first thing is, once there's a property to be purchased, more often than not is commenced by somebody with a desire to say, oh, I want to buy a house or I want to buy land. First thing the person does is to approach any real estate consultant or an agent to say, oh, I want to buy this land. And the agent takes him to a site. Once you get to the site, the first thing to do is to consult either a land surveyor or a real estate lawyer for him to do what we call the due diligence for you on that property. And one of the things that, and so that the professional will do a number of things before telling you to go ahead or not to go ahead. And so one of the things the person will do is what we call a search, which would entail a number of steps. And one which is to take points on the land and then would go to the Surveyor General's office to do what we call a charting or either the survey plan or point of the land to know a number of things. One of the things to know is what we call the status of the land. Status of the land can be one of three things: either the land is acquired by the government, or the land is committed for a government use, or the land is free. You can only purchase the land when you are sure that the land is free, and then there are no government encumbrances or issues on it. Then the next thing to do will be to consult your lawyer if you consider it of your earlier, to him to prepare documents for you on that particular transaction, and then your agent would guide you through that process. I'm just saying it watching the highlight, because this process can take months, depending on the actual facts of the case or the actual title of the land or things like that. So those are just the basic points. Is once you consult a professional, a land surveyor or a real estate lawyer, it will guide you through the nitty-gritty of that particular transaction and will give you either the go ahead to buy or not to buy, as it were. So those are just the basic steps to take. So once you see a land or a house that you like, consult either a land surveyor or a real estate lawyer to guide you through that process. And based on the facts, it would know what to do and how to advise you on it. Yeah.
So walk us through that part of the Ministry of Land Survey and Urban Planning in Lagos. Take us through where they come into this and how long this whole process. You mentioned the search in itself, and from the start to when you get the clearance, how long does this take? You are the expert at this.
So it's quite low. So the first thing you do, like I said, once the surveyor picks the point on the land or takes a copy of a well done survey, is to go and get so once you obtain something called a land information certificate, it tells you a number of things. One, it tells you the status of the land, whether the land is acquired, whether it is committed or if it's free. Second, it tells you what zoning the land is for. So land can be any of 5 zoning. They can be a residential zoning, it can be commercial, industrial, agricultural, or mixed use. So that's one of that's one thing. Then it told your information certificate will tell you what you would do in order for you to obtain your perfection. Either you get a COO or you can get what you have to do in that light. So those are the things that's the first stage that you go to. And after you get all those, because after you buy your land, for that, the first step. If you now want to build, you need to get a building plan approval before you commence building. But the building approval will take into cognizance possible setbacks on the land from the front, the site, and all that. The architects will draw the design of the house, and then you get a building plan approval. Once you have your building plan approval, then you can now commence building. So, what demolition in general happens when either the land itself you're building on, you're building on a land acquired by the government, or you're building on a land without adequate title, or you are building without requisite approval. Those are the two main grounds on which properties get demolished. Yeah.
Now, this in itself would lead to the question, seeing the agony of the persons who were involved, who've been thrown, into the streets right now, with so short a time to pick up valuables. Most of their properties would just be demolished, would just be in that structure demolished. Maybe they just have only the clothes they're wearing when it occurs. So the question is, these houses, from the visuals I saw, are not things you can create or you can build in 3 days or even a week. So it now begs the question of, where are the enforcement authorities? And how culpable are professionals like yourself? I'm not you now, but
Yeah,
in this
professional.
process,
Yeah.
urging property investors on, and then here we are.
Yes, so a number of things like this. So one is at the town planning authority, the ministry in charge of the building plan approval and all that, the town planning authorities. One is, so they have a very important, one of the things they do is most times they go into property, because they are domiciled in every local government, and they go from time to time into the environment to see houses that are contravening building codes, and they give appropriate notices to those buildings. The sad reality is the general decadence in things, and people have ways around those notices that come. A large number of times, even when you're driving by, you can see houses where you see an X sign or a stop work order and order, and you see people still walking even though the order is there. So some things may have exchanged hands behind the scenes, as it were. So it's a general decadence that causes things like this to linger on, and some as long as you have the funds, you can get away with almost anything. And it's when there's someone who decides to now enforce, that a number of these things now come to the fore. But yes, there are town planning officials who go around giving notices to buildings when there are contraventions, and enforce and try to enforce those contraventions. But generally, some people just do things they just do things to just get away from those things, and we get to this stage. I believe also that if people get professionals and listen to those professionals, I'm sure we would not get it. There are people who will they're just professionals will tell them, advise you not to do, I like this place, I want to get this place, tell me what to do to get this place, or tell me how I can get this place. And then those are times when people try to look for things that they can do, or look for ways around it. But when you get a professional and you obey, or you listen to the professional, and you try to do things according to the law, we would not get here. Yeah.
All right, let's let the listener know we can have them as part of the conversation. After we come from this green light stop for traffic to flow by, let's let you know you can be part of this conversation by giving us a call. Let's get what your impression would be. The recent demolition of houses around the Kota axis and other ones that would also come under the radar in the days to come. What exactly can we do to avoid such a situation occurring over again? And that's one of the big issues we're treating this morning. And we've got our guest here, Ayobayo Babade, and is a real estate consultant and property lawyer, speaking to us. Let's get your calls after this time on 01-448-9981. And also would like to read those WhatsApp messages on 0809-444-0981. Once again, for calls 01-448-9981. And then also for WhatsApp messages, 0809-444-0981. That said, it's still Lagos Talks 981 on Smooth 98.1 FM. My name is Omatseye Atsenuwa.
Frank Donga, and you're listening to Smooth Breakfast.
My name is IBK Spaceship Boy. I inspire my world through music. On Smooth 98.
All this plenty airtime and data. Why they take flex? Now dash me, you go believe.
For this guy got on me.
Buy me closing like this. I just collect 1,000 naira. Welcome bonus. As a phone recharge, do nothing. 10 times airtime bonus. I also enjoy double data. Joy. Wait,
You mean 1,000 naira welcome bonus?
Yeah.
Plus 10 times airtime bonus.
Yes.
Plus double data again. Where's your neighbors now?
Look at the universe now.
What's right? Oh, no wonder boys you flex anyhow on top phone 247 non-stop.
Calm, my people. Don't let grass go under your Lego. Get your account SIM today. Dial star 777 hash to buy and enjoy 10 times airtime bonus plus uploadable data. Offer day for both new and existing subscribers there below.
Driving in Lagos traffic in the evenings can be such a enjoy all-round entertainment in the company of the smooth, dynamic maestros and let music be your therapy. Love music, love a live station. It's your smooth drive home with soothing soul music, great spice of jazz, tune toppings of rhythm and blues, and everything else radio friendly that you enjoy. The Smooth Drive every weekday from 4 p.m. Hey, what's up? This is Ray. Stay tuned, stay locked right here on Smooth 98.1.
We're Smooth 98.1 FM, 17 minutes already past the hour of 9 o'clock. It's still the 19th of October, 2023, and we're still looking at the issues around housing, land use, and sundry issues in Lagos. So remember, before we left, we expect you to give us a call on 01448-9981 relating to this issue. Demolition of houses that were encroaching on the channel for water to go by. And that's what the state government is saying, that there is no going back. Houses standing on the rights of way for water to be drained out would be taken down. And we've seen that around the quarter axis of the state. And it seemed like it's a tale of lost sadness for persons who put in a whole lot into that sector. So when things like this happen, what impact does it have on the real estate of of Lagos, the value? What pressure does it put to it?
Yeah, so a number of things. So one is on generally in Lagos, for example, you see there's pressure on land. And that's one thing. So we're able to build almost everywhere, building so close to drainages and all that. It's because there really isn't that much land. Before the entire Lekki axis used to be very in 20, 30 years ago was very scanty. Now everywhere is built up. Ibeju Lekki used to be the scanty some years back. Now it's already built up. Ekpe used to be very scanty back then. Now Ekpe is getting almost, so there really isn't land anywhere, and so this puts more pressure on land in general, and so the land prices would just keep going up, sadly. But on the flip side, it makes people question a number of things. One is like, how sure or how safe is my investment? If I put so much and see some investment go down the drain, what would I how do I protect myself? And so it just makes people more aware of possible issues that would occur when people do not go through the proper channels to get things done, and it just makes people to just be aware of that. So that's one thing that is. So on real estate in general, sadly it may deter some people, because if you go to social media, some people are beginning to bring in some other sides to it, that to target at a particular set of people or group of people or particular segment of society and all that. So it brings those speculations in as well. However, it's been dispelled that it's just those building on that right of way, and make people understand that just be careful whenever you buy property and you see anything constitutional, so that one is able to safeguard oneself from issues like this occurring. And so not just so, for example, this is just dealing with those that built along the canal. Sadly, there are times you see high tension wires just building within the under it or within the setback from it. Equally, like you see people building too close to the road. There are setbacks you should give from the road and your house. See people.
Babade, you would make the point, but I understand we've got a call, so let's just get this call across and then you can deal with it.
Sure.
Good morning to you. Good morning, please. I'd like to know your name and location. All right, Chika, what's your contribution? You have a question for the expert this morning?
not putting punitive measure without preventive measure. And what I mean by this, they are spoken well, but I think there are quite some issues that we haven't discussed or we haven't analyzed fully well. Number one is that who approved the sales of this land? Who approved the building on those waterways? Because he cannot tell me that the government will claim the ignorance of that building from foundation to the completion of the building. More so in an entire estate. These are some of the questions that are begging for answer. Because you cannot, in one hand, collect levy for approval, collect levy for some other things before you need to build and all those things and documentation. Then one morning you wake up, you now begin to realize that those buildings were actually on a waterway. And if we're even discussing the issue of waterways, I don't know if you're just aware that entire Dolphin Estate used to be a water channel before. And I found to be corrected because as far back as the 70s, 80s, from what I've learned and what we've been told, the entire Dolphin Estate is actually a water channel. But today, Dolphin Estate is actually one of the high-brow areas where even some of the policymakers and the government have their buildings. And if we're discussing about the issue of waterways, why is it a cutter? Because we know that there are so many buildings that are sitting on the waterway. Go to Jorabade, go to Amukoko, go to Safajo, go to some part of Atenuwa, go to Ina Ikorodu, and virtually part of the whole Lagos State. Buildings were actually sitting on waterways. But my question is this: why does government keep giving approval for these buildings and allow the buildings to be completed, then wake up one morning and now begin to realize that those buildings were actually on waterways? And finally, part of the waters that were actually reclaiming, and now I'm making reference to Eco Atlantic and also some part of Banana Island and what have you. What is the guarantee that in 20, 30 years' time, some governors or some government officials will not come back and tell us that some of these buildings there now are also sitting on a waterway? So for me, I think there's a need for us to be circumspect in whatever we're doing. And the way the manner they went about that demolition is in a very bad state. I mean, you can't ambush people and begin to bring down their building with their property without even giving them time to even take out their property. I mean, that was done in an inhuman manner. And I understand the reason why it's so. And for him saying that maybe some people are actually speculating about this thing. My brother, you cannot blame people if they begin to speculate about some of the things they speculate, because government actually gives them room to speculate, because they've gone about this.
All right, Chika. All right, thank you very much, Chika, for your time this morning. We appreciate you, Bertie. Thank you. So, Babade, the issues are here once again. So I'd like you to sum up that point you were making and then respond to some of the questions that is raised now. Like I said, what's the pressure would it put on real estate in Lagos as a result of this?
Yeah, so I was pretty much done with the line of thought.
Yes.
And let me just go to the question. So yes, some of the points he raised, I'll just address them. So first is on building approval. So the one of the mild challenges is, so yet the proper way to do things is to get approved building plan before you start building. And so, but there are times in the past, and so those are some of the challenges that this thing brings up. So there are times when people could go ahead and build, and then go and get as built approval, meaning they built in contravention of the law, and then go back. They'll pay fines, they'll pay penalties, but they'll get their building approved. And so, because of that provision, there are times when some either developers or landing out like, oh, let me build to my satisfaction. I know I'll pay fines, I'll pay whatever, but I'll get my approval later. However, that doesn't work when you are building within government setbacks. So there are setbacks for when you want to build, either, like I said, if it's along, so it's because they're building and within the setback of a canal. Those were only the ones within that estate that was demolished. So they were used, it was the entire estate that was demolished, not the entire estate. The part of the estate built within the setback of the canal was what was cleared. And then, yes, there are times when an area could be, in time past, be a waterway or a water channel, and then there could either be a redirection or there could be things done at the state planning level and then brought back. So, for example, like you mentioned, Banana Land used to just be a body of water. Eco Atlantic was once a body of water. And then once there are government approvals towards all that, a lot goes into those structures before they come to life. And so those, there would have been redirections of the water. There would have been a number of things done behind the scene before you see those things coming up. And like I said, I'm not saying that there will be some people who probably may have done everything they ought to have done right. Something went wrong. Those people still have a means of redress in the court. They could go to they could take appropriate authorities to court and get compensation for the demolition that has been done. So if, for example, they have their CFO, they have their approved building plan, and their building was still demolished, then they can get compensation from the government for wrongful demolition of the property. But once those things are not there, possibility of getting compensation is very limited, if not impossible.
Let's even throw this in. There might also have been the possibility of these estates or houses around that setbacks. They must have been paying what you call probably the land use charge. And yet, so how can you have been collecting charges from those areas, for example, and then when it's time to demolish now, you realize that they're like just bouncing off of the question you said.
Yeah, so those are things that yes, I would not doubt if there is if there are possibility of them paying land use charge or them being assessed and told to pay land use charge while in contravention. Like I said, there are a number of measures in the law that sometimes can, if not something extreme. So, for example, even for documentation, there are times when an area can be under general acquisition that are not committed. There's some parts that you can do a ratification of that land where you could go through a process to obtain your CFO from the government. Those are exceptions, but like I say, it's better to be safer. Yes, so most would say, the exceptions I can always ratify and then buy a land that's acquired, and then it might be a portion of land that ratification is not possible, and so the person would be stuck. At times when you say, I can always build and I can get my approval, I can get my as-built approval later, and then the person, he may not be approved because it is built within a place that nobody can approve. So those are placed at some loop, or I can't say like some exceptions in the law that people may want to exploit, or people may feel it could be exploited, and then in the long run it may not be. So those are things that one just has to be, like I said earlier, it's best to get professional and listen to the professional when they give advice, so that one would not be in this state. And like I said, if there are anyone who has done things as they ought to, and it's still in this state, then the person can take the government to court. Yeah.
Well, again, we still got some more grounds to cover before we let you go this morning, and that one of it will be the laws regulating land in Lagos. Would like you to speak to that when we come back. And then there's also the issue of professionals, not you now, but who are like in the same profession as you, into the real estate sector, what you call land speculators, and what they do to unsuspecting members of the public, and how we can safeguard members of the public from it. These and many more issues we have to unpack when we come back. Plus, we'll be getting the calls in on 0809 444 0981. That will be for you to send in your WhatsApp messages, and then we'll also get in this one for calls only on 01 448 9981. It's off the background of the recent demolition of houses around the Lekki 2 phase 2 axis. They were on the drain axis, and so the government said they have to go, and those still on the road, there's other areas would have to go. We are Smooth 98.1 FM. Stay tuned.
Love music? 98.1. What it is? Come on, buy your leaves are red.
title of Slum King is reserved only for the chosen, so no one else carries an aura worthy of its weight. Follow Badger's epic journey to power and the all-new action-packed drama Slum King, starting October 8th and showing Sundays at 8 p.m. on Africa Magic Showcase on DSTV and GoTV. This is Smooth Breakfast. Smooth Breakfast, the Smooth Breakfast Show.
We're Smooth 98.1 FM. It's going 28 minutes now before it is 10 o'clock. And so gradually we're heading to that termination point where we bring the conversation to a close. But we still got our guests and we still got quite some issues to help unpack this morning. And my guest is Ayobayo Babade, a property consultant, real estate consultant, also speaking on a property lawyer, as it is also helping us. So we're going to get into, there must be laws around land in Lagos regulating it. So I'd like you to speak to these issues now, because for someone listening, and so we have a reduction in cases like this, and to save money and resources and time put into all of these structures, and then one day they are coming down.
So there are quite a number of laws that guide land or real estate in general in Lagos. So one basic law that we call the main law in land law is called the Land Use Act, and that's one law that covers entirety. And one of the portions of that law states that every land in a state is kept in trust with the governor for the benefit of all Nigerians. And so it's based on that a large number of things relating to land in every state is governed or guided by the governor, as it were. And so that's pretty much one fundamental. So, for example, many of the rights, for example, the right to have for the government to issue COO comes from the Land Use Act. Then the right of the governor to be able to give the governor's consent comes from the Land Use Act. So a number of rights on land come from the Land Use Act. But there are quite some other laws that guide what you can now even do on land. So, for example, we have the Urban Regional Planning Law that guides what you can build. That's law that provides for setback, from trains, from pipelines, from high tension wires, from a number of things. So it gives provisions as to setbacks around that. We have the Property Protection Law. That's also called the anti-money law or the land grabbers law that gives that stemmed the tide of land grabbers in Lagos. We have the Land Registration Law that gives you the right to register your right or interest in land. And one novel provision of that is for one who has had or acquired interest in land, or if you have been in possession of land for a couple of years, in upwards of 12 years in Lagos, you can apply for you to get a right to that land as well as a CFO. So there are a number of other tax-related laws relating to land, like we have the Land Use Charge Law, we have the Capital Gains Tax Law, there are a number of tax-related laws as it's related to land. Then we equally have those relating to professionals, one of which is the Lagos State Real Estate Regulatory Authority Law. That's a LASERA law that guides professionals in the industry and makes sure that every professional you engage in the industry ought to be registered with LASERA. So for it to start with an estate agent or a broker, that broker or an agent ought to be licensed by LASERA before the person can press service to you. And so those are just some of the laws that we have there. So based on what you desire to do on your land, then it can be other laws that may now come up that you also need to be aware of on that land. Yeah, me too.
Now, this looks very good now. So there is not an absence of law governing land development in Lagos, which is good. So if there are laws in place, how do we protect hardworking people who've been able to deny themselves of many things, comforts in order to get shelter? That is very important. Because in this space, it looks that's where property consultants and real estate agents are. and you mentioned the last RERA law, but how come we still have dubious land, real estate people operating in Lagos, and people have lost millions to these people? What are you people doing to make sure that people are protected?
Yeah, so like you noted, it's not because there's absence of law. It's sadly just because there's inadequate enforcement of laws, that's been one major bane of a number of laws that we have. Like we have been saying earlier, what were people looking at when those buildings were from foundation up to when they were roofed and people were living in it before coming out to demolish it? And so those are things that where enforcement ought to have come much earlier, to say, oh, you're building here, you cannot build here, or and then all these practices were demolished at either foundation level or at decking level, the losses would not be this much. And that's what. Then secondly, for example, for Lashera, everyone who is a professional in the sector, either you're an agent, you're a broker, you're a developer, ought to be registered with Lashera in Lagos State. But like there are many people who just wake up tomorrow and say, oh, you wake up today and say, oh, I'm a painter, I'm also an agent, I'm a this, I'm also an agent. And so without understanding the nitty-gritty of real estate, and that's people to just buy whatever it is and then just get a commission, and then you can't find them anymore. So that's why there also has to be a lot of sensitization as well for the public to know before you meet with any agent. Ask them, are you registered with the Lagos State? Can I see your license? Are you a professional, so that I can know that if anything goes wrong, I can go. The law also provides where you can go to lay a complaint against an agent who sold the property that has issues for you. The law gives you provision to. So there are a number of things. It's not a matter of not having laws, it's just the laws are not enforced enough. And I think it's just balancing a number of things, because, for example, there are fines or sanctions for people carrying out real estate business in Lagos without being licensed. But at the same time, you also look at two approaches. If you start arresting people who are agents, there's another outcry of, oh, you're trying to punish the masses for not. So it's a very delicate balance, I feel, for those who want to enforce as well. But there's a need for us to ensure that whatever it is we do well, and profession, and we shouldn't allow non-professionals come in just to make people lose hard-earned money. It's a lot of money to buy a property, a land or a house, and losing it is not one thing that is nice to hear.
So in essence, most of these buildings that were demolished by the government has been around the setback for drains or the canals around this location. They must have been gotten from real estate agents who should know what these things say, the laws say about the setbacks and how safe it is not to build around those places. But yet, they still go ahead to let people buy and develop such property.
Yeah, so like I keep saying, it's not absence of laws, it's absence of enforcement. So, for example, everyone, for before a party is demolished, many things would have gone wrong. So one, for example, from the agent who bought or sold the land, to the developer or the person building on the land, and then to government authorities who ought to have done things to safeguard that. So a number of people are culpable. For example, the developer has to be a member of the actual register with Lashera, has to be read, and that's the real estate developer association of Nigeria. And so those are bodies where you can report people who are going against the law, to say, oh yeah, your member has done this, and they can give sanctions to those who are doing what is wrong. So yes, there are a number of avenues for those who may have lost funds to seek redress, and even in the court. And so there are a number of ways for people to seek redress. But the mere fact that the investment has gone so much into it and they're losing it is what is most painful in this circumstance. Yeah.
So as we get ready to go for next green light stop for traffic to flow by, we need to get your response. There's been an increase of the activities of what you call the land grabbers and terrorizing innocent people who've worked so hard, set up property, and then they just come in there. And how can the government address this?
Yes, you see, when I was mentioning the laws earlier, there's a law against that. That's the but the issue we keep having is just an issue of enforcement of those provisions. Yes, there's a task force in place where you are to go to report those cases once there's a land grab on the land. But I think what most people look at in the society is just sadly the general breakdown of in some parts of the state of how things should be. And so what comes to mind people is, yes, I report these people to land grabbers, but I'm living with them on a day-to-day basis. Once the task force goes, who faces them on a day-to-day basis? I'm going to my house and I'm seeing some of the people who are not. So it's just that balance or that general sense of possible fear that may make some people say, okay, as opposed to me going to the task force, let me just settle with these people. And then it reinforces those things and then give that sense of entitlement, and then brings back the issue that the law itself sought to address. But yes, there's still a task force against land grabbing. You can still report to them, and their office is still at the Ministry of Justice, and they're doing what they can to address land grabbing issues. So once you just understand that there's a law in place, and let's make it work, do the petition to the land grabbers task force and do your and follow up with the petition, and they would take steps to address the land grabbers. They are still doing a lot of work, but like in Lagos, it's quite large. A number of things go on that until you make a petition before they know something's happening on your land, and then they can take steps to protect the land from the land grabbers.
I've got a message in from Azuka Opute, who sent in this one, and it says, that's Azuka from Yaba. It says, for ease of doing business, government should make available online, open source, the master plan of neighborhoods. This makes it easier for developers than the owners to know potentials. The planning authorities are more concerned on individual property design as opposed to planning neighborhoods in advance. Now it goes on, in summary, let master plans be online for ease of reference and can, so for example, this area that was demolished around Ikota now, if the master plan was online, it's not a question of you as officials, that's when you come and show us hard copy. Let's just go online. And probably when you walk with your agent to a site, if you can go online and just check it out and say, tell the agent and say, look, this is not saying the same thing you are telling me. Do you think that would also help address this kind of situation?
Yeah, so tech and AI will do a lot to address many issues that we have in real estate. If that's a whole topic on its own that once we go into may not end today. But one thing is that yes, it would accelerate. For example, but what we have now is you can do a charting of whatever survey plan of the land. You can do a chart, and then to tell you, like I said, whether it's committed, acquired, or free, what use it and what zone it, so that you are able to have an idea of it. But yes, I agree that once you're able to step up our tech, one thing we have to realize is that there is two prongs. So one is, yes, even these just available online. Sadly, would an average person be able to interface with that master plan to understand it and interpret it well enough to be able to make informed decisions? So that's why in that whole scheme of things, you will see in professionals to guide you alongside. That's why the first thing I always say is consult professionals so that they can guide you on what to do along the way. But yes, I agree, tech would go a long way to help resolve a lot of issues we have in real estate.
I've got one more nagging question before we let you go, but that will be when we come back. And so we'll let the listener know they can give us a call on 014489981 relating to real estate issues in Lagos and how not to fall prey to agents who would come and rip people of their hard-earned money. You can feel free to give us a call on 014489981 or also send us a message on 0809-444-0981 after now.
Size of Lagos. Yeah. Your favorites, your Babade, Mariam, and Tony. It's time to bring you even more charm, style, and drama. Faith and Tanya joined a coaching that adds some extra spice. Subscribe from 1,200 naira month. Sign up now at showmax.com.
This is only a taste of our next release. Suffering and smiling.
The Real Lagos Talks, only on Smooth 98.1.
The environment, politically, our society is underdeveloping because of alien system on our people.
The truth, the news, your opinions.
My one and only question is, as a Nigeria.
When you talk, Lagos listens because we bring to the fore the top headlines and the daily essential stories about the nation as they happen. From harsh economy to trickling politics, sports to entertainment, we talk it all. When you talk, Lagos feels your pulse. Lagos Talks on Smooth 98.1, Mondays to Fridays from 9 a.m.
We're Smooth 98.1 FM, 13 minutes before it is 10 o'clock, and that's our termination point this morning. So, but before we get to wrap up conversation this morning, I still got Ayobayo Babade speaking to us this morning on real estate issues and how to avoid heartbreaking issues in terms of conformity to laws governing the real estate in the state and a whole lot of issues. So, my question for you is, please explain how land planning in terms of neighborhood planning, relating to the question Azuka raised a while ago, neighborhood planning. What's the current state of Lagos, in your opinion, the neighborhood planning? What's the state in terms of your opinion? When you look at, you would have a club in a residential area and have a filling station right in front of a hotel. And what does that say about urban planning?
So a large number of times, in terms of what is done on paper, we don't have an issue. Like I told you, one of the things that you see me say a number of times is when you do a search, you would know whether it's acquired free or committed, and whether on what use is that code for. So it could be a residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, or mixed use. So when it comes to planning, for example, there's the Lagos Master Plan. There's even a revision they're trying of that master plan again. So there's a lot like happening behind the scenes and on paper. When it comes to implementation, that's where the issue is. So for example, there are many places where on paper is residential, but when you get there, you're seeing banks, you're seeing offices, you're seeing eateries there. Some places where on paper it's a number of the ways is agricultural on paper, you're seeing housing estates there in reality. And so it begs the question of enforcement. And so that really is the main thing that we are having here, which is that yes, on paper they do all these high level discussions and planning and everything is done, but when it comes to on ground, people just do as they can. And then sadly, once the officers to enforce come there, after parting with a couple of bills in their pockets, they just say, oh, you can go where you're doing. And then when it becomes something so serious that those in government have to now be involved, that's when everybody gets here. But when it comes to on paper, and that's why if you go to the regional office, you would see the master plan, you see everything seems to be as planned as it should. But it now comes to on ground, it is when you see, for example, before you build any estate, for example, you need to have like your estate layout. That's a must. And your estate layout would have your residential areas, your commercial areas, where your petrol station should be, where it has to be designed. And is that once the layout is put up, you can now start selling what is within the estate. But you see people do things anyhow, and it's when it becomes an issue that everyone gets involved. So enforcement is really a big issue. Until we know how to solve that part of our problem, we are having these issues back and forth.
There is also the major issue now for developers who have come into this business. So would I like you to help us sort out this issue of a real estate expert and developers and the role they play in real estate sector in the state?
Yeah, so developers, their role is just to build out it. And so they have a key role because we still have a huge housing deficit. People need houses to live in. And so their role is very, very important. But it is just the entire ecosystem that needs to work as it should work. So for example, a developer buying a land needs to understand that, okay, this land I'm buying, I know because I'm buying to build for someone to live in. I need to ensure that the land I'm buying is free from whatever issues is there, such that whoever buys this property will be able to live in without any issues. And so at a certain point, a number of things. And so, but because it's not just one person at fault, it's an entire system. But when the developer knows that I can build whatever it is and go back and get whatever approval I need to get after the fact. So it's a general ecosystem issue, not just one person's issue to blame, or it's the agent that sold the land. If the agent sold the land or sold the house, but somebody built it, and so it's an entire ecosystem, and so blaming one person would not see the big picture. It's us trying to see how to ensure that whatever we do is enforced. It's going to be it's a sad system, but until we're able to get enforcement right, honestly don't know how and that's at all levels, sadly. So it's until when issues occur that this side of things is not as it should. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy you are the professional in this. And so we have you here. So we'd like you to touch on the state of building collapse of experience in the state and how we can address this. We'd like you to touch on that as we wrap up this morning. Hello, if you're still there, we'd like you to just reset your, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I didn't get that clearly.
Okay, we're looking at the role of developers in building collapse and the role experts like you would play to help us address this state of building collapse.
Okay,
quality.
Yeah, building collapse. Wow, that's yet another issue. So for building collapse, that's another ecosystem. So one is we're looking at the quality of material. So yes, we're looking at the building has been approved. And so one major issue we've seen in the few collapses that has occurred is people going beyond what was approved. Practical example was one in Ikoyi where it was approved for a number of floors and the person added additional floors into the collapse. And then yes, you have substandard materials. So I keep saying most of the time we look at just one last leg of that developer, but it's an ecosystem thing. For example, there are some where it's because of the materials. Someone goes to market to buy materials, but somebody imported substandard materials, sold it for you at the actual value of the materials. You put it on your site and the site has issues and it collapses. So it's a big ecosystem issue. And so we look at just the one person who is the last leg, but there's a lot there. Standard Banking of Nigeria, products coming into the country or products being sold in the market, how standardized are they? So it's a lot that professionals will just do their own part, but the government has a huge role to play, and until enforcement is sorted out, we'll just be going around for these things. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. This is where we will say thank you for being part of the conversation this morning. Ayobayo, Babade, real estate consultant and property lawyer for your time this morning. Do have
Thank
a great
you very
day.
much for having me. I appreciate it.